Today I was going to talk about the Counter Blitz green, white, blue deck. The theme it says here is add counters, pass them around. The main suggested commander it shows on the front is Titus, Yuna's Guardian. So let's open up the deck and see what interesting and fun cards are in here. So, as I said, the main or suggested commander was Titus Uniguardian. It's a 3/3 legendary creature, a human warrior for a forest, a plains, and a island. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. Cheer. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn. So, I mean, it kind of prevents you from, you know, taking multiple combat phases and, drawing and proliferating multiple times, but it's still pretty cool that you get to um, draw and proliferate based on uh, one or more of your creatures dealing combat damage to a player. And where this deck's centered around, counters, that's going to be pretty fun. So, another one of the possible commanders is Yuna Grand Summoner. It's a legendary creature, a human cleric for one forest, plains, and a island. It's a 1/5. Grand Summon. Tap, add one mana of any color. When you when you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with two additional 1/1 counters on it. When another permanent you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, if it had one or more counters on it, you may put that number of 1/1 counters on target creature. So you can potentially um, move those counters, even though it's not really worded as moving. You're just, oh, this creature died and it had counters put on another creature. Like it's seems like it's worded funny, but it seems like you're moving it though. Auron Ventured Guardian. It's a 2/5 legendary creature, a human spirit samurai for 3 in plains. Has vigilance. Shooting star. Whenever Auron attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it. When you do, exile a target creature defending player controls with power less than Auron's power until Auron leaves the battlefield. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. You're putting a 1/1 counter on this and exiling a creature until, well, one of your opponent's creatures until this guy is dealt with. So, it forces your opponent to use removal or start losing a bunch of their guys. And where it's exile, not graveyard, it's not like they can go, oh, hey, one of my guys died, I'm pulling it back from the graveyard. Chocabo Knights. It's a 3/3 creature, a human knight for 3 in plains. Whenever you attack, creatures you control with counters on them gain double strike until end of turn. So, I mean, double strike on its own is pretty good, but when you have stuff with 1/1 counters on it, that well, it's just his counters, but presumably you're playing 1/1 counters among other things on your creatures. So I mean, you're buffing your guys already to then be like, oh hey, you have some counters on you. Yeah, you get double strike. Gata and Wuzu. It's a 1/1 legendary creature, a human soldier for 2 in the plains, has flash. When Gata and Wuzu enters, choose target creature you control. If damage would be dealt to that creature this turn, prevent that damage and put that many 1/1 counters on it. So, I mean, it's a creature that also acts as a, you know, instead of a removal spell, it's almost like an anti-removal spell because it's saving your creature. It's preventing it from dying, or at least from damage being dealt. Or Driscoll Guado. It's a 2/1 legendary creature, a spirit cleric for 1 in the plains. It has flying. At the beginning of each end step, if you put a counter on a creature this turn, investigate. The rule reminder in parentheses says create a clue token. It's an artifact with 2. Sacrifice this token, draw a card. Protection Magic. It's an instant for 1 in the plains. Put a shield counter on each of up to 3 target creatures. The rule reminder in parentheses says if a creature with a shield counter would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. So obviously it's not regenerate, but it kind of gives that feel off to me where back in the day, regenerate was, if something would die and go to the graveyard, you pay the regenerate spell to say, oh, hey, I'm staying on the battlefield and being removed from combat instead. And being tapped. So it's kind of like different way, but it's another like protection spell basically. And it's kind of cool that it's for up to 3 creatures for 2 mana. Given regenerate was as long as you could pay the mana and there wasn't something preventing you from using regenerate, whereas this is a counter, so once a counter is removed, you can't do it again, I guess. Summon Exion. It's an enchantment creature, a Saga Unicorn. It's a 3/3 for 2 in plains. As this saga enters and after your draw step, add a war counter, sacrifice after 3, because there's 3 different stages, if you will, which is why you're adding the war counters. So the first one is Aereo Spark. Exile a target creature an opponent controls until this saga leaves the battlefield. And then 2 and 3 are the same. Put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. You gain 2 life. And I mean, where this is a 3/3 creature, in addition to being a saga that does those abilities, the 3/3 creature has first strike. So as long as you don't kill it as a creature, you get to use those steps, if you will. Summon Yojimbo. The 5/5 enchantment creature, Saga Samurai. And the 5/5 creature part has vigilance for 3 and the planes. As this Sega enters the battlefield, or as it enters and after your draw step, add a war counter. Sacrifice after 4. So again, there's 4 stages, if you will. The first one is exile target artifact, enchantment, or tapped creature an opponent controls. 2 and 3 is until your next turn, creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each of those creatures. So if your opponent had 5 creatures they wanted to attack you with, they'd have to pay 10 for all 5 of those creatures just to be able to attack you when it's on stage 2 and when it's on stage 3. So, I mean, that's kind of helpful to tax your opponent to limit how much they're attacking you. And then stage 4 is create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of opponents who control a creature with power 4 or greater. So that one could kind of go either way. I feel like the last stage should be a little bit more powerful, but if you're only doing Commander 1v1, you might only get 1 token, or none if your opponent doesn't have any big creature. Summoner's Sending. It's an enchantment for 1 in the planes. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile a target creature card from a graveyard. It doesn't specify whose, so it could be yours or your opponent's. If you do, create a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying. Put a 1/1 counter on it if the exile card's mana value is 4 or greater. So unless your opponent's running some enchantment removal, you're potentially getting rid of cards in your opponent's graveyard to get a 1/1 flyer. And if the mana value is 4 or greater, you're also putting a 1/1 counter on that creature. So, I mean, that seems pretty good for 2. I mean, yes, you could, remove a card in your graveyard, but depending on the card, you potentially want to get that card back in your hand or on the battlefield and not exile it to get a 1/1. Blitzball Stadium. It's an artifact for X in the island. When this artifact enters support X, the reminder text says put a 1/1 counter on each of up to X target creatures. Go for the goal. Tap 3 in this artifact until end of turn, target creature gains. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card for each kind of counter on it, and it can't be blocked this turn. So where this not only is putting 1/1 counters on up to X creatures, it's also allowing you to draw cards based on counters on a creature, and saying this creature can't be blocked until end of turn. So, I mean, that's pretty decent. Lulu Stern Guardian. It's a 2/3 legendary creature, a human wizard for 2 in an island. Whenever an opponent attacks you, choose target creature attacking you. Put a stun counter on that creature. And you can pay 3 and an island to proliferate. The reminder text says choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. So you could potentially put a stun counter on a creature your opponent controls to then proliferate to put more stun counters on said creature, and then, each time in the future, whenever your opponent's attacking, you put a stun counter on a different creature, so you're potentially forcing your opponent not to be able to attack because you're putting stun counters and multiplying the amount of stun counters using proliferate. Owaka Traveling Merchant. It's a 1/2 legendary creature, a human citizen for 1 in an island. Tap, remove a counter from a non-land permanent you control, draw a card. I mean, depending on the counter, removing a counter may or may not be a good trade-off to draw a card, but with how many things are going to be in this deck to either add counters or proliferate, I mean, depending on the situation, that seems pretty good. Riku Resourceful Guardian. It's a 2/3 legendary creature, a human artificer for 2 in an island. Whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature, until end of turn, that creature can't be blocked by creatures your opponents control. So, I don't know why it specifies creatures your opponent control instead of just say can't be blocked by creatures, but there must be a reason for being that specific. Steal, pay 1, tap. Well, tap this guy. Move a counter from target creature an opponent controls onto target creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Summon Veil 4. It's a 5/4 enchantment creature, a Saga Drake with flying for 4 in an island. As the saga enters and after your draw step, add a war counter. Sacrifice after 4. The first stage is Semic Wings. Each opponent chooses a creature with the greatest mana value among creatures they control. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. And then step 2, 3, and 4 are the same. Tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. So you're, preventing your opponent from attacking with one of their creatures their next turn unless you find a way to proliferate. So for stage 2, 3, and 4, you're adding a stun counter to one of your opponent's creatures. That's kind of helpful. Maester Seymour. It's a 1/3 legendary creature, a human elf cleric for 2 in a forest. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to Maester's Seymour's power on another target creature you control. 3 and 2 forests, Monstrosity X, where X is the number of counters among creatures you control. The reminder text in parentheses says, if this creature isn't monstrous, put X 1/1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. So the monstrous mechanics has the potential to be very cool, and in this case, it's obviously getting bigger to then, put more 1/1 counters on a particular creature. Spear Grid. It's an enchantment for 1 in a forest. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. Unlock ability. Creatures you control with a 1/1 counter on them have reach and trample. So, I mean, in addition to putting 1/1 counters on your creatures, giving reach and trample to your creatures with 1/1 counters, that's pretty strong. So, especially for 2. So hopefully, that gets to stay on the battlefield. Your opponents don't have removal at the time, because that could potentially shift things in your favor. Summon Magus Sisters. It's a 5/5 enchantment creature, a saga fairy with haste for 4 in a forest. As this saga enters, and after your draw step, add a war counter, sacrifice after 3, and the stage 1, 2, and 3 are the same. Choose one at random. Combine powers. Put 3 1/1 counters on target creature. Defense. Put a shield counter on target creature, you gain 3 life. Fight. This creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. Now, where it says choose one at random, I'm not really sure how you choose at random, because if you get to choose, you're going to choose the best option in that particular scenario. So unless you're maybe rolling a dice and saying 1 and 2 represent this, 3 and 4 represent this, 5 and 6 represent this, unless you're something like that, like you're not gonna say, oh, I choose what I want to. Like, I'm not sure how you're doing the random part. So if anyone watching this knows, please feel free to comment and let me know. Thanks. Tromel Seymour's Butler. It's a 2/3 legendary creature, an elf advisor for 2 in a forest. Each other non-token creature you control enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it. Pay 1 and tap this creature. Proliferate X times, where X is the number of non-token creatures you control that enter this turn. The reminder text says to proliferate, choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind that's already there. So not only, once this guy's on the battlefield, not only are non-token creatures that are entering on your side getting 1/1 counters, but you can pay 1 and tap this guy on your turn to proliferate a certain amount of times to add more counters to your guys that are already entering with 1/1 counters. So, I mean, that's pretty strong. So I see that potentially getting removed quickly. Yuna's Decision. It's a sorcery for 3 in the forest. Choose one. Continue the Pilgrimage. Sacrifice a creature. If you do draw a card, then you may put a creature card and or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So, I mean, that seems like a decent trade-off. You maybe get rid of a 1/1, something that's nothing special, to draw a card and put a creature and or a land onto the battlefield. So it's not one or the other. You have the possibility to do both if you have both in your hand. So that seems pretty good. The other option is find another way. Return one or two target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Um, so, I mean, for four to potentially return two permanents from your graveyard to your hand to be able to replay stuff, that seems pretty decent. I mean, four might be a lot. I don't know. I don't know a lot of the cards that return stuff from your graveyard to know the mana value of those kinds of cards off the top of my head. Yuna's Whistle. It's an instant for 1 and 2 forest. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When you reveal a creature card this way, put X1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the mana value of that card. So not only are you getting a creature card from your library to your hand, you're also putting X1 counters on a creature that's already on the battlefield. So, I mean, that seems fairly strong. Obviously, the bigger the higher the mana cost, the more counters you're putting on the creature that you have on the battlefield. Kimari, Valiant Guardian. It's a 3/3 legendary creature, a cat warrior for 2, a forest, and an island. It has vigilance. Ramso Rage. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on Kimari and tap target creature an opponent controls. Then you may have Kimari become a copy of that creature, except its name is Kimari Valiant Guardian, and it has vigilance and this ability. So, I mean, a 3/3 with vigilance that has the potential to become a copy of an opponent's creature that you're tapping seems fairly strong. So, I mean, yes, it might be converted mana cost of 4, which includes 2 different colors, but to have that, I feel like this is another creature that's potentially getting targeted pretty quick, especially once your opponent realizes what it does and how out of hand it might get. Shalinda Yvonne Acolyte. It's a 2/2 legendary creature, a human cleric for a forest and a plains. Has lifelink. Whenever another creature you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on that creature if its power is less than Shalanda's power. Otherwise, put a 1/1 counter on Shalanda. So, I mean, a 2/2 with lifelink, and you're putting a 1/1 counter either on a creature that's entering the battlefield on your side or on this creature. So, I mean, you're buffing one of your creatures no matter what, and this guy, or this creature has lifelink, so the bigger it gets, the more life you gain off either attacking or blocking with it. So with how much of the deck I still have to go, I'm going to do another video on this in the near future, but hopefully you found some value in this. Thanks, and keep checking back. And have a good day.